Surprise!
Bugaboo eyes are all one can see. Bugaboo eyes light up the dim sky during these most vulnerable hours of man. These forces that commence me in a state of intense curiosity. The delicacy of these ingenious pursuits are engaged by the local meat busher. The sheer artistic knowledge given by such activities mustn't be left untouched.
I am left traversing the hazed and irreputable grid of my shattered mind.
Unknowing and alone. After this brief thought, I stumble onto the fields of bliss. I am a golem, a husk, cursed by knowledge and experience. The smooth breeze that comes from the comparatively empty sky relaxes me and convinces me to continue walking. I arrive at the side of a road, clearly unattended to. It was left prominent that this American-made issue was in fact not the fault of any such man, but a beast, a monster of the woods. Mr. Bean first aired in 1971 on the upstate Shrinky's Public Broadcasting Division. The critical reception of the show within the small community was extremely negative initially, but many consider it a true diamond in the rough. Respected by men such as Jonathan Bullpusher, believe that Mr. Bean was the start of a revolution in television culture. Brendan Brownstain's Beaner, known to his little friends as Mr. Bean, was generally perceived as an outcast amongst his peers in high school, and though Mr. Bean managed to complete the entirety of his primary education, Brendan was unfortunately diagnosed with grave disease as a teen and could not proceed with his academics. This was the first instance that inspired Mr. Bean to don on the new iconic tri-horned mule dog appearance that various Mr. Bean critics claim he possesses. To rephrase what famous Mr. Bean critic Hainsley Grimus said, "The closest thing I could possibly relate this infamous look to was the fall of 2002, a statement that I and others hold dearly to our hearts. Me and my hound pack, Pegleg and Neil, sat around the corner of a deli street and sang doo-wop songs for chump change that we could barely afford bubblegum and circus peanuts with. After the big economic crisis at the time faded away, doo-wop was on every college radio station playing 24/7. Around the same time, me and the hound pack reckoned we got in pretty good and thought that we could maybe make this opportunity to go pro. We met up with some Fat Cat record label man and got to business. Staring into those lustful moose eyes, you become mesmerized by the little droplet of puss that runs down his nose. Because of this, me and my hound pack always refer to him as the Bugaboo Bachelor. I always find something to take away from that prison scene in Season 1, Episode 3. Some little wrinkle I had yet to discover. In this episode, Mr. Bean has to find a way to communicate to his cellmates to plan an escape, whilst in a state of constant peril and delusion with the opposition. This reminded me of the Israeli children building houses out of dirt just to have a roof over their heads. Parentless, unknowing, ignorant, blissful. I wonder if Israeli mothers feed their young out of a trough, just like Mr. Bean's parents did. I wonder if the grotesque and sludgy mixture of canola meal and mule feces contributed to the disgusting texture of Mr. Bean's gruesome skin complexion. They ought to put that in a science book, I tell ya. Something else that should be studied in class is Mr. Bean's anal tissue. It is said that it produces as much moisture as a moose-knuckled gladiator shoe's dressing glands. This has been confirmed by several producers who solicited sexual favors from Mr. Bean in exchange for acting roles. These instances of whoring is what put Mr. Bean on the so-called lamp of fame, with iconic hookups involving Jimmy the Banana, who wasn't a banana despite his name, Harvey Slim Jeans, and even the genius composer, Frinkle Hawkins. I remember waking up in a snowy and desolate zone that was too astute and filled with oblong mountain ranges that perplexed the simple minds of the local wildlife. This heartbreaking experience brought me back to the conversation I had with my faithful companion and occasional fuck buddy Pegleg. We conversed over olive oil and wine with a light course of mixed nuts. The gray men from afar approach, he explained. We mustn't falter in our readings of John Faustus. His brilliant works have inspired such pieces of literature, like The Autonomy of Mr. Bean, he added. But what about the aquametic vials of Hawkir that inhabit the streets and possess the mind of the innocent, I contradict. Worry not, we shall, for the spoils of these readings will reveal us to a more civilized manner in comparison to the untamed wild spirits that possess good fortune. People like Mr. Bean are unknown to intellectuals like Faustus. We mustn't become distracted and go astray. And with those now last words spilling out of Pegleg's pretentious mouth, I unleashed my blade, forged by my apprentice, Chinkaling-Dong, who performed puppet shows with his bare feet in the unbearable temperatures of southeastern Florida in preparation for the yearly open mic improv blow-up bonanza hosted by the one and only Mr. Bean. In retaliation, Pegleg whips out his stubby shiv he uses in the annual kebabbing of the ferrets, native to the Mexican tribe of Wallofagawam. Dr. Lee Fungalbutt makes sure the shiv remains at warm temperatures to prevent dulling. I cripple Pegleg in one swing with ease, but restrain myself from dealing with a finishing blow. I just couldn't. My only friend, who wasn't Neil, shall die by my hands. I instead leave him in search of his mother, and invite her to my bi-weekly helicopter show. The first ever aired episode of Mr. Bean was likely the darkest as well. Mr. Bean is fired from his job for the putrid stench emanating from his fungus-infested feet. The hardcore Mr. Bean fans can recognize from a mile away. In search of comfort from the life-threatening financial situation he was scooped into, he seeks shelter in a local bar. Here he pounds liquor while rehearsing his infamous juggling routine to the twisted and distorted men. This soon turns concerning after he urinates on a frequent customer's shoes. As many Mr. Bean fans know, the television episode was filmed live and the cameramen were told not to stop filming as they followed Mr. Bean, thus adding the gritty and realistic illustration of a man at rock bottom the show is oh so famous for. Once his sordid display of disorderly conduct comes to a finish, he exits the bar and shimmies into his car, all while the cameramen are still following him in, and the owner of the bar is shunning him. He drives well over the 25-mile speed limit in the residential neighborhood he is traveling through. As he arrives in the intersection, he refuses to notice the red light and crashes into an SUV. A mother and child fatally pancaked by his careless nature. Mr. Bean and the camera crew manage to survive the incident and record it in its entirety. The dillo-plated face serves as a sick reminder to the viewer that Mr. Bean was here to stay, whether they liked it or not, and I liked it. The realistic depictions of violence in the Mr. Bean show harked me back to my childhood. Disappointing, with innocence short-lived.